Hello, welcome to the May 30th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de or simply send questions or type your questions in the live chat field. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running. So if it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist or Pro, which operating system, which version number, if it's 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, that information is helpful. And realize that my ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed, and I'll try my best throughout the live stream to catch up and answer all the questions chronologically. And if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could refrain or try to avoid asking the same question over and over again, that will just kind of slow down the whole process. And we should have all the topics in the live stream that are discussed today pinned to the top with timestamps. It may be a little later than usual. I have to take my son to an orchestral rehearsal this evening, so it may delay the index, but it will be up later tonight. And if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. We want to thank Jan from Stockholm, who's kind enough to create that wonderful resource where we could search through over 25,000 questions that we've covered in live streams. We also want to give special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude, who function as moderators on the live stream. They're not Steinberg employees; they just do it to make it a better community. So we give special thanks to them. We also want to give a shout out to Jazz Dude for all of his work with the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for the Steinberg community. Today is the last live stream of the month, and in about 2 hours we will start a Zoom meetup. So we usually do this on the last live stream of the month, where we'll have kind of a little get together. We'll have a special guest today, Ted Perlman. I've known Ted maybe 20 years or so. Ted is a wonderful musician, producer, engineer. He's worked with, the who's who in the music industry over his storied career, including Burt Bacharach, Harry Belafonte, Chicago, Bob Dylan, Whitney Houston, Diana Ross, just to name a few people. And Ted has amazing insights and stories that he could share. So we look forward to meeting up with Ted. And if you have questions on like vocal production, he's like really amazing at that. And he's also worked with Brian Wilson of the Beach Boys, just to name a few people. So we're really fortunate to have Ted join us today. And with that, we will go ahead and start questions. I'm going to post the link to the meetup here. So, and I'll try to post that about every half hour or so. And we look forward to seeing some new faces on the Club Cubase meetup. All right, so we see from Taylor from Pine Grove from Music for World Peace Records asks, is there a way to see global tracks in the drum editor like you can in the key editor? So I think it's going to be limited to the key editor. So I'll just make sure, but I don't think when we go full screen on the drum editor, because generally we don't see so many, so we don't have the global tracks function here, because a lot of people may do drum editing in a lower zone where they could see that. But currently it's the global tracks aren't in the drum editor and are only in the key editor at this point. All right. And also just a quick note, once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I'm presenting from Alexandria, Virginia, which is just outside of Washington, D.C. In the United States. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. All right, so we see Ayuel from Switzerland. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see from Mark that he had a strange line and the problem disappeared, so that's good. All right, so we have a question. It says, Greg, when in formant pitch mode, where do I change the formants? Okay, so I'm not sure if we are in maybe the offline processing. Let me just take a quick look. so let's say if we come over, so I'm not sure if it's going to be in if you're doing it directly from here, but if it's in the Very Audio editor, so if we come right over to Very Audio, we say Edit Very Audio, change the Smart controls to show all smart controls, and then as we go to the bottom right or bottom left, you could shift the formants directly there on each segment. So the bottom right, we could adjust the volume. In the bottom left, and I'll just make this a little larger so it's easier to see. So we just, as we hover over the bottom left area, this dot right here, as we adjust, you could adjust the formants directly there, or you could shift formants directly from the inspector column. So let me know if you're asking about in Very Audio Editor. All right. All right, so we see a question from Jeff Stanton. It says, greetings from London. Sketching ideas on a Yamaha Montage 7 in Cubase Pro 12. Looking at score editor, list editor. There are 5 duplicate notes for each actual note I played. Any ideas? So probably the patch that you're using on the Montage is probably like a multi patch or a compy patch where it's playing 5 different MIDI channels at once. So it may have like 5 different sources, and each of those sources is on a different MIDI channel. So as you play if you record into Cubase directly from that device, it's transmitting on 5 MIDI channels simultaneously. So if you switch to like a single voice when you're sequencing in Cubase, then everything should be captured over as a single voice. One trick that you could do is if we have like a MIDI track here, you could go to the we'll go to the input transformer. If you're on version 11 or earlier, you'd see the little squiggly line here. But if we come to the input transformer, we could go to track, and then we'll open up the panel, and you'll actually see different presets for channel filtering. So if you say, okay, I only want to pass channel 1, you could now just filter out all the channels. But Cubase is capturing all that's coming out of your motif, or your montage rather, and probably your montage is transmitting 5 different sounds on 5 different MIDI channels at once, and Cubase is just simply capturing that. So again, you could switch to a single voice, or come over to, select this and go to the input transformer, and then just use the presets, factory presets for channel filtering. All right. Okay, so we see a question. Hi, Greg. I often create templates from existing projects that I like. However, if I delete the source project, the files/links are gone. How can I import the whole sample pool into the new project? All right, so if you're saving it as, okay. So if you're deleting the project, so what you could do is if you're in the pool, you can just come over to the pool window, and then once we have everything kind of set up here, you could choose to what we call export, and then you'll see a library file. So once we come over, so let me just see if it's, so from the pool, we'll just come over, let me just check. So we could just say create a new library, and then all you'd have to do is come over here and then choose to import. You'll say open library. So we'll just come over here, we'll say new library, and we want to basically just choose the audio folder, and then at that point, so select the folder that you want for the project, and then you can come over here, and if you wanted to open the library, that would be a reference that's basically like saving your pool. All of your audio files can then be directly imported right there. Okay, so you see from Lars, the question is, how can I get a reasonable volume level with synths recorded via line input? Fairly low volume, minus 20 dB. Clip gain doesn't work here because the clip gain line is already on top of the track. So one of the things you could do is obviously make sure you're getting the proper amount of gain. Most synthesizers will actually output at line level, so you should be fine. You can come over here, and even if you're at the top of the volume level for an audio event, you can still increase the gain here by, let's see, 22. We'll go some more. So you could increase by 24 dB just on the clip gain itself above 0 dB. Now, if your instrument, I'm not sure what instrument it is, or if it's all instruments, make sure you're going out of like the main outputs. Most of them were kind of designed to work directly with that. I've seen some people with some low output where there's an impedance mismatch, and you might have to run it into a direct box. But if you could let us know, while you're recording, if you have the volume full up on the instrument itself, if it's a particular instrument, and make sure you're not going out of the headphone output that may, have a different gain structure than outputs 1 and 2. And if there's anything you could do inside of the instrument to increase the gain, but you could add more, you could add, up to 24 dB of gain from the volume above 0 as well. All right, so we see Uno Memento from Finland. All right, we see Agent K and Jazz Dude both on. Great to see you both. And we see Jan from Cubase Index. All right, we see Nick. He wants people to mash the like button and hopes that everyone had a great weekend. All right, so we see from Dallas LaRue says, sometimes in tempo detection when dividing by 2, I get the message multiple tempos were detected. Apply smooth tempo function. Please explain this. So if you have a file that has kind of large jumps, so let's say we have a tempo map that was kind of like, okay, kind of like here, and then at some point it just, and you go, okay, maybe, this is the same tempo but twice as much, or you wanted to kind of smooth the transition between 2 points. That's when you could use kind of the smooth tempo function to kind of alleviate kind of unwanted jumps. All right, so we see AJ Soundbites on. All right, and we see Jason Wood just saying hi to everyone. Antea says hey. All right. All right, and we have Mikkel Ronberg from Amsterdam using Cubase Pro 12 and Windows 10. All right, we have Soren from Sweden, who's on his phone as he's renovating his apartment. Good luck with renovations. And we see Benny from Sweden. All right, we have Stefan also from Sweden. All right, so a question from Rich. He asks, hi there, I did 4 audio horn parts the other day in a key of G. I then pasted them later in the song, which modulated to A. I soon realized they were transposed. Sorry, I'll just turn my phone volume off here. Okay, I did 4 audio horn parts the other day in key G. Then I pasted it later in the song, which modulated to A. I soon realized that they were transposed across the whole song. Help. Okay, so if you have an audio event here, so I'm not sure how you transpose. So let's say if we have, I'll just revert to this quickly. Okay, so you should, if depending on your arrangement, if you come here and just say, okay, I want to take this file here, we'll just listen to our drum loop. And let's say at this point I copy it. And let's say at this point I wanted to change the key. I wanted to transpose this up too. So let's say if I go to audio, we would come over here, let's go to process, and we'll do a pitch shift. And we'll say, okay, we're going to go up a major second. Okay, so now when we listen to this, you know, what happens is if we transpose a particular file up, we are processing the same exact audio file. So there's a preference that if you come here, and it's one of these little dialog boxes that you often turn off, and we go to editing to audio. When you see on processing shared clips, just choose create new version. Otherwise, if we just come over here and we process the existing clip, what will happen is as we do a transposition here, it'll process the existing clip, and anytime that this same audio file occurs, or that this file is used multiple times within a particular project, we're taking this file, and then every instance of that file will be treated the same way. So on shared clips, you could just say, create new version. Another way around this, and when you do a process on this, it'll leave the other file intact, and it'll create a new audio file with the changes that you've done. What some people will do with this also is just to come over here to take the file. If you go to audio to bounce selection, at that point you could just simply create a new file, and that will function independently. But if you copy the same file over, and your preference is set to process existing clips, anytime that this file is used in the project, you do an edit, it's going to be applied to all of them. Or if you just simply set this preference to create new version, it'll make a new version of the audio file every single time that you're doing a process. All right, so we see Patrick just says he's happy to be on live. And who's a special guest on Zoom Meetup today? So his name is Ted Perlman. So we're looking forward to where everyone can meet him. All right, so we see Michelle ask, why can't Cubase work with 32-bit plugins? The app is too expensive for it to have limitations. So 32-bit plugins are in fact one of the biggest limitations, because it actually leads to a lot of system instabilities. Most operating systems are always wrapping. So there's a lot of plugins that cause significant issues for not only performance, but for system instability. If you still need to run 32-bit plugins, you could get something like on a Windows platform, something like JBridge. But realize that most of your 32-bit plugins will cause Cubase to be will cause your computer, not just Cubase, but other programs to be running in an unstable manner, bridging them. So, Cubase hasn't really, we moved away from 32-bit plugins, but in Cubase 9.5 or so. So most of the industry has, moved on. So. All right, so Mark Isper says, can I enter the Zoom meeting just to watch and maybe learn something new? Of course. Yeah, that's kind of the whole intention is, and I always think it's wonderful to meet people. So yeah, you could definitely just kind of be a fly in the wall and watch. But we hope you join in, and we hope to see you on. All right, so it says, can we create shortcuts for audio processing? I tried to do so for reversing a one-shot, but it doesn't work. I have to end up just using the drop down instead of for the shortcut. So let's just come over here. Let's see if I could just create one for reverse. So at this point, I will go to, let's say my key commands, and we want to go to, there could be several different reverses. So let's say we want to process, and then we'll choose reverse. So I'll just program a key command for this. Okay, so now I have this. I will come over, and you can just see that it just reversed. So if we undo that, so just make sure that you're not doing like if you searched in key commands, make sure that you're pulling it from the correct area. So it's not going to be from probably edit. It's going to be under, for the audio, you'd probably want to access it from process, reverse. But that looks like it worked for me. So no problem there. So make sure that you're doing it from there and not a different, like a MIDI reverse, which is also a separate function. All right, so we have Esteban Carlos Benson, just checking in from Los Angeles. Thanks for being on today. See Jeff Stanton about the montage says, oh, of course, it makes perfect sense. Thank you so much. We often get that from people that have montage. It's a typical question. My chat field just jumped. All right, so we see from Alexander Music, hi Greg, I hope Groove Quantized presets are coming back again to Cubase, and 13 will surprise us. I see other companies bringing great stuff to their programs, which I would like to see in Cubase too. So, we already have Groove presets. So if you have like a particular, let's say an audio file here, I'll just double click. I'll come over, let's go to, let's say our hit points. So I'm going to just find my hit points here. We'll set our threshold, and then I'll say let's create groove. So once we do that, we can see our groove show up right here. So that's our groove, and then you could just simply save the preset. So that's all you have to do. So you can have groove presets. So you can take any audio, or if you have like a MIDI file, you go, okay, I really like this particular groove of this MIDI event, and just drag it into the quantize window, and then at that point you could just save your groove preset. So Cubase never really went away from having groove presets. They're just right there. So you can take any audio, drag it in, and have your own groove presets. All right, so we see Lars just mentioned maybe the instrument that he was using was a Moog. So let me know if it's like a more contemporary one or a vintage one. But you should, but if it's actually outputting line level, that would be good to know. All right, so Stefan Carlos Benson asks question. When I right-click on the mix console to add a track preset, the pop-up window appears, but it won't show my audio track presets. It seems to only show instrument presets. Can this be changed? Okay, so let's come over. All right, so let's say I think I have different inserts here on this. So let me open up this particular track and add. So we'll come over to the mix console. You have this selected. All right, so we'll say save track preset. And we'll call this Stefan. Okay, so we'll come here, we'll save it as your name. So now if I wanted to go to my Mediabay, let's go to user presets, track presets, audio, and then I'll drag this over to this track. And now we compare our track presets. We can see that they are identical. Let's say if I drag it to channel 3, just drag it over, and then so it seems like once the channel is selected, I can just right click and save track preset. Let me know if you're doing it differently, but it seems to work as expected here. All right, so we have Portatil Estudio Venezuela on, so thanks for joining us today. All right, so we see question. I see a lot of gear have Ableton links to make your hardware work great with that DAW. I wish Cubase would add everyone around me is just Ableton. Is Ableton that? Anyone else agrees? So really all you have to do is, with a lot of stuff, realize that, we're doing everything at the sample level. So when we do a lot of synchronization, we need it to be more precise than what you're offered with something like Ableton Link when you're synchronizing digital audio between different computers. So realize that you're going to need, like clocking. You need clock from the devices to properly synchronize between them. So I think a lot of times where something just kind of runs at the same tempo and kind of freewheels, that it's not really kind of a proper sync. All right, wonderful to see Spike Williams from Rhonda, Wales. All right, you see Weatherford, Texas from Michael Teams. Thanks for joining us. And he wants to thank all the veterans for service to the country, no matter what country. That's a good sentiment. I think Michael was in the Air Force, if memory serves correctly. Okay, so Lars asks, I accidentally erased a file sample in the Mediabay. How can I reactivate it? So if it's still on your computer, if you go to, let's say if you could just go to Mediabay, and then at this point, because a lot of times let's say you could delete a particular file, but if the file is still on your computer, if you just select the particular folder and then that the file is in at this point, and then try to rescan the disk. And if the file is still on your computer, it will then should rescan and should show up directly inside of Mediabay. There you see Spike Williams is like number 33. All right, so we see AJ Soundbite says, by the way, last time whilst asking a question, it showed me error saying not sent, so I entered it a couple more times, and boom, the same question was sent more than once by mistake. Apologies for that. No problem. Yeah. We understand that stuff like that can happen, but sometimes people, can get impatient, and it's like, okay, I'm going to get there. Yeah, I just had to catch up. All right, so let's see, if I saved accidentally with files deleted, where can I find the backup project? All right, so generally you would see, I'll just come over here to, if you get to your Explorer or Finder, depending on your computer. So let's say if I go to my projects here, let me just see if we have some in here. So a lot of times you may notice that where the project is, you may see just a .bak file, and this is the backup file, and this would be your backup. So you could just simply open up the backup file directly from there. So generally it's going to be if we go to Cubase here and we go to preferences, it'll create a backup anytime something changes, depending on what you have set for the autosave, if autosave is turned on. So just go to the directory of where the file is, where the project is, and at the same level you should see .bak files by default. And then you could just simply open them and get your files back. All right, so we see from Jason Wood says, "Hi Greg, I love your Cubase lessons. My question is, how do I make my new Lexicon PCM native reverb plugins live in Cubase 12 Pro, not showing up in the effects list? Thanks." So I'm not sure if they're VST3 or VST2. I have them on my personal system. I've always been a Lexicon fan. If it's a VST2 plugin, you might have to just simply come over and go to your studio menu to VST plugin manager and click on this little I button here, or click on the little settings cogwheel, and then you could see you could add a VST2 plugin path. So if it's a VST2 plugin, make sure that you have the path where the plugin is installed to. Make sure that that folder is defined. Also make sure that it's not going to be in the block list. So if you have some plugins that may be blocked, depending on if you realize that depending on your operating system, like if you're running an M1 Mac and you want to run native for Apple Silicon, that it needs to be a VST3 plugin to take care of that. So but check to make sure if you had the VST3, it should automatically go to the correct folder. If it's a VST2 plugin and you're not running on Apple M1, just make sure that you have the folder defined in Studio to VST plugin manager, and click on the little settings cogwheel, and you could add the folder right there. All right, so we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. See, Michael Teams is just doling out the ice cream, so appreciated by everyone. Okay, just reading through. All right, so we see Michael Pierce just checking in from Bonnie, Scotland. He's working in Airbnb today, finishing some jobs, so hopefully be available a bit later. So hope you're enjoying Scotland. Always wanted to go there. I have a good friend, dear friend that used to work at Steinberg, lives there. Always invites me out to his house, so I'll have to take him up on it. All right, so we see from Alfred G. Pogo. He asks, Greg, last week I asked about navigating lanes without a mouse. Thank you for your efforts. One solution, solo lane key command used the keyboard arrows, but navigation was wonky. Could you try it? So I came up with another solution after kind of playing around with this. So we'll come over. Let me just open up that particular project. Grab some comping. Okay, so there is a, so let's say we have a number of different lanes. So let's say as we look at this, we'll open up our lane view. So we'll see take 1, take 2, take 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. Now there is a function, and I was just having a brain cramp on it on Friday's live stream, where you could go to edit, and if you go to move, so let's say we select the event. So we see right now we're at take 1, that we could come over here. We'll say edit, move, and we'll say events to back. And then we could just kind of cycle, and you could also move events to front. So I created just this on my MIDI remote. So let me just come over here and I think we put this on untitled page. Yeah, so now if I wanted to, so I just have this key set for move events to front and move to back. So as I just come over here, I could just navigate between my different takes. So as I move to, so now I could just come right over here and we can move that particular event to the back. So we say, okay, let's go to 4. So we could just now come over here and cycle through different events. So try the move to back and move to front commands. It's under edit, move, and then to front and back. So give that a shot. I think that will help. Sorry for having a brain cramp on that on Friday. Okay, so we see Lars on the instrumental low-level output. Says the output is a headphone output, no other output available. It's a newer one, 2 years old. Yeah, so it should, so you may have to get a direct box, and most instruments, I know the Yamaha instruments always have line level outputs, specifically for this reason. And it helps especially for live performance. So it, it could be maybe feeding that into like a stereo direct box may help, or make sure that you have the full, headphone output, or if it's, make sure that you have like the cables are kind of the right impedance for the headphone output going into your audio interface. And if your audio interface has, if you have a way of getting it to XLR, you may be able to boost the gain through a mic preamp as well. All right. All right, I'm going to paste the Zoom meeting info. All right. All right, so we see question. Hi, how do you import MIDI files to the ChordPad user library MIDI loop so you can use the import MIDI loop in the player modes pattern in addition to MIDI files quickly? Thank you. All right, so let's come over. Let me just go to different project here. All right, so let's come over to our chord pads. All right, so now if we audition chords, we'll activate it here. Okay, so now we can kind of trigger different chord pads. So as we do this, okay, so let's say now if we wanted to go to like the MIDI loops to audition, let me just come over here. Let's go to the player remote. Sorry. Okay, so we go to our player mode. So we come over here, we can say, let's go to patterns, and then we have import MIDI loop. So it's not going to be necessarily like a straight MIDI file, but if I wanted to have, if I had a MIDI event on my particular screen, all I would have to do is just drag it. And now when we go back to listen to the chords, we'll just say, so if you have a MIDI loop, which you could access from the Mediabay, but if it's just a MIDI file, import the MIDI file and then drag. So once again, just come over to the import MIDI loop. So it's not in the MIDI file. So a MIDI loop actually contains, like, you know, the instrument that it was associated with and has some other information beyond what a standard MIDI file can offer. So once it's in the project window, just drag and drop that directly into the drop MIDI part. So all you have to do is just kind of come right over here. As you drop it right in, just drop that MIDI event directly in, and then you should be all set with that. All right, wonderful to see Brian Sawyer from Beulahville, North Carolina. Glad you could make it. All right, so we see Michael Teams was, in fact, in the Air Force. So thank you for your service. We appreciate it. All right, so you see from Alexander Music says, I'm going to look into Jazz Dudes. As I remember back in Cubase, you had, says I remember back then in Cubase you had group templates, and it was just so fun in my opinion, but now I guess it's implemented in a different way. So you still can have fun with it, but you could just have a lot more different grooves and make your own grooves much easier. All right, so we see Learn with Steven, and he said in regarding with the VST plugin that wasn't showing up, I think the Lexicon plugin says the downloads might be going to a separate download file, and it happened to him. All right, wonderful to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin on. See, AJ Soundbite says he found himself using grooves as a bloody crutch. It's like alcohol for confidence. Gets the job done, but what are you going to do when it isn't available? So, all right, so we see Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of butterscotch ice cream. Thank you so much. It's starting to feel like the start of summer here, so we appreciate that. especially my son. He loves his ice cream. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, so Couscous asks, hello, is it possible to place audio events into another track's existing lanes without disrupting their selection order? All right, so let's say, let's jump back to a different project here. Okay, so let's say I have my lanes here. So let's say I'll just have one selected. Okay. Right, so I'm going to just add an audio track after activating the project. That would help. Okay, so let's say I have this audio, and let's say I have the lanes of this particular track. So let's see. So you want, is it possible to place audio events into another track's editing lanes without disrupting their selection order? So let's say if I just drop that in to the lane, let's come over here and see if that. All right, and let me see if I have the, if I just drop it. So it looks like it does affect the, but let me just try recording maybe in a different way. So I'll add an audio track here. I'll just do non-cycle recording. So I'm just making different lanes here. All right, and let's say if I want to take just this little bit, and we'll drop it on top. So let's see if we open up. That could also be, let me check one other thing. A preference that might affect it is delete overlaps. So let's say I'm going to just go to editing and we're going to uncheck delete overlaps. And let's see if I drop this in. So you could move it down to a different lane, and let's say if I want this to show up here, that's just added to a particular lane as well. So it looks like it might be contingent if depending on the delete overlap status. So make sure that when you get to editing and uncheck delete overlaps, and I think that might allow you, that just allowed us to add it to different lanes without having to worry about it. So now if I come over here and we just put it on the blank lane here, we can just have that not affect the other one. So make sure delete overlaps is disabled. Let me know if that helps. All right, so we have Thermonuclear War checking in from Serbia. All right, so just see from Anteas, maybe feature request, ambience. So, yeah, maybe if you could ask a question a different way, if it's a feature request or if it's something else. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. Hope you can make it to the Zoom meetup. All right, so we have a question from Soren. It says he's reconnected with his PC now. He's up and running. His question is there any point using the algorithm standard vocals for vocal audio warp work, or is Prolastic that is the best? So, generally you're going to use the standard vocals for if you're doing very audio, because that's part of the detection, like the pitch detection algorithm. But if you're just doing like, straight audio warp where you're stretching it, you could try, you could always try different versions. A lot of people never leave beyond the default algorithm. But in extreme settings, or if you're doing like extreme things, if you're changing it, like it's going to be 4 beats per minute faster, it may not be as critical as, okay, it needs to be 60% of the tempo and slowed way down. Then you may notice more of the particular algorithms are better suited for different types of material. All right, so we have Laird Kilbarkin, just saying hi to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. All right. All right, so we see Matt Elder says, hey, Greg, my drum editing has been going much better now. It seemed I had too many plugins on, and I guess it was taxing the system, even though it was a powerhouse computer. Thanks. All right, well, glad you got it kind of sorted out. And know that you could always put the plugins on after the drum editing. All right, we see that Pablo is probably not going to make it, the drummer of Hot Mess, but we have 3/4. Okay, so we see John Barry very handily just said that FR is France and Amiens is a place. So, yeah, excuse my American ignorance there. Okay, so it says, so I have the latest Cubase running on a MacBook Pro 2019 Monterey 12.66 Intel. Even though Cubase is idle, my laptop is very hot. I don't understand why. So that was, a common kind of complaint of, the i9 like the i9 MacBooks would generally, so a lot of times what the computers often do to kind of make the, and we see this on the Windows side a lot, we'll try to make sure that you're, for energy efficiency sake, which is kind of a big measure, or batteries on laptops, that it can kind of sometimes throttle or slow down the processor to make the computer battery last longer, because that's a metric often used to measure laptops. And sometimes it could be one plugin that could be causing your system not to, to have the fan turn on, or it could be your audio interface or stuff that's connected to it. And that's one of the reasons why Apple was kind of chose to go to the Apple Silicon chips. So, and also, if you could let us know if you're running, if you're running with ASIO Guard on or not. Okay, so we see Larry B just saying hello, all from Brampton. All right. All right, so Kuz asks a question. Thank you. One more question. How can I choose which automation channel should be displayed if they don't have any keys on them? Do I always record the keys first? All right, so I'm not sure if it's so let's say if we have like automation on a particular event, maybe I'm not understanding the question well, but let's say if I come here and we have, so I'm not sure if it's an audio track, or let's say if we have automation on, it says, how can I choose which automation channel should be displayed if they don't have any keys on them? Do I always record the key source? So I'm not sure, Kuz, if it's actually like a MIDI part, or if it's an audio part with automation, or if it is perhaps a actual MIDI event. So let's say if we go to this project here and we have a MIDI event, so maybe if you could clarify, like if we see automation, so I'm not sure if you're seeing so how can I choose which automation channel should be displayed if they don't have any keys on them? So even if we have, and maybe it's like MIDI CC data, so let's say if we have an empty event, so there's no keys, there's no notes on this event, but we could just double click on the event, like we could create an empty event, and then if it's with like MIDI CC, so let's say modulation, we could still have MIDI CC data. Let's go ahead and add main volume, and let's add expression. So even though there are no notes per se, we could just come and still have MIDI CC data, but I'm afraid I may be kind of misunderstanding the question, so maybe if you could ask it a different way. All right, so a question from Larry B. just says, I'm planning to upgrade to Windows 11. Any specific guidance on potential Cubase audio interface configurations to change to deal with after the upgrade? So it's pretty straightforward. So you may want to, if you're going to, update your operating system on the same computer, you may want to deactivate. If you go into your Steinberg activation manager, you may want to just to be safe, you may want to deactivate your Cubase license and your other Steinberg licenses, and then reactivate them once your operating system has been updated. But for like the audio interface, most of the stuff, like when I went from 7 to 10, it was pretty seamless to work with. But if you could let us know if you're doing it on the same computer or if it's a new computer. So you see Garrett just said it was a hot mess laptop and that he has to use throttle stop to be able to max out his PC, and that Silicon seems to be the way of the future, and Intel needs to get their act together. So all right, so see, I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's more questions that come in. It seems like everyone is learning their Cubase after 3 years of live streams. Everyone is learning their Cubase really well. We'll see more questions. Okay, so we see just a clarification on the automation. It says, I mean the automation for the whole track. For instance, how to make the pan automation channel visible for a track without creating key record entries. Okay, so if you wanted to take, let's say we have a track here and we wanted to show pan automation. So if we go to the automation panel, so if we click directly, thank you for the clarification. So click on or if you hit F6, we can now say, I want to see all of my pan automation. I want to see volume automation. So at this point, we could just say, I'll open up a different project. So we'll say, something we could get a sense. Okay, so if we wanted to just come over here and again go to the automation panel, we could just say, I just wanted to see the pan automation, or I just want to see volume automation. So we could just open that up, and let's see if we could maybe set up a project logical editor to and we could say, let's hide all or show used only, but we may be able to open up just a logical editor. So let's see if we can do it in a project logical editor. I'm not sure if we can. Okay, so let's say we want to do so say our container type is track. right, so here we could just open up the automation on a selected track, and let's see if we could so we'll see if we can do name contains or so we'll come over here, see if we can do it by name here. So I'm just going to take the selected track, and so it's going to go to yeah, so I don't know a way to, if I do, let's show all pan. Show all pan automation. I think this is going to be globally for everything. Yeah, so I don't know way, so, but you could just immediately open it and then, see panning automation for each track. So let's say if we just come here. So let me know if that's helpful for you. But, just coming over and just say, okay, I want to see pan automation or EQ or volume on different tracks. You could do it like that. See, Gareth just says with Windows 11 being so close to 10, he noticed next to no special needs. All right, so a question. How do you determine the root key of a song? Thanks. All right, so there's a couple different ways. So if you have, let me just find a particular track here. It doesn't have. Okay, so let's take something. It's going to be like acoustic guitar, some MIDI piano. So we can go to listen to it here.
Recall the day we first met. That was a long, long time ago. Do you recall?
So say harmonically, the song's going to be based around the guitar part. So I'm going to open up a chord track, drag the guitar part directly to the chord track.
Stereo's home.
And then once we do that,
You look my way and your heart.
it will automatically figure out kind of the chords of that. And if we have this little box checked right here, we can say show the scale, then we could see the key indicated directly there. So whether it's for a MIDI event or an audio event, drag it to a chord track, and if you have show the scale, that will indicate the key right there directly for you. So no worries with that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and paste the Zoom meetup link again. So again, we'll have Ted Perlman as our guest. All right, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question. It says, what is the shortcut to change color quickly on a track? So, so if you want to do it, easily, you could just come over here and set the particular color just by clicking in the track name here. We could also colorize different events if we use the color tool. So we say, okay, I want those chords to be green, indicating maybe this is a transition. I do this on projects, okay, when we get to the chorus, this needs to be, so I know that the chorus is coming. So you could colorize different events on the same track. So if you wanted a keyboard shortcut to do this, you could go to the project logical editor and say, okay, I want to take like the selected events. So let's come over here. Let's go to project logical editor, and so we want to say media type is container type is equal to an event, and that event is selected, and I want to set color, and then we could say set to fixed value, and I want it to be that particular color. So we can say, okay, now I come here, I want to select these events here and apply, and we could change the color, or we could do it on tracks. So let's say, okay, I want this to be set to red instead for the selected track. Oh, I'm sorry, we'll say is set to is selected. So now we come over here, the track will be red. These events that I select here, when we go to event, we could just come over and just say, and change them all to the same color. So if I want all these selected events to change to green, you could do that as well. So I want to take these, let's change it to a different color. But there's no general key command for colorize this because people could have all sorts of different colors. So check out the project logical editor. So you could do, if you needed to save them to access from a controller or from keyboard shortcuts, once you save these, they will show up under your key command. So let's say we'll come over, and once we have a preset saved, it could be accessed by going to edit, to key commands, and you'll see process project logical editor presets, and then any preset that you've made, you can assign your own keyboard shortcut or assign it to a key on a MIDI controller to be triggered. All right, so we see Larry B has to sign off for today. Thanks for joining us. See, the Heartbreak Time Machine is watching in the car this morning. All right. Okay. Just reading through comments. All right, so we see Paulie DC just saying, hey, all, been way too long since I've been able to attend due to work. Missed these, so we're glad that you could make it today. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, why is Cubase exporting in real time when an external effect is selected on an effects channel, even if my sends are bypassed, or when the external effect is disabled on the FX channel itself? Just as soon as it's actually kind of instantiated within the system, then it's going to put it into like a real-time export. So if you didn't want the particular effect, remove the effect, but it still sees that and it's still compensating for all the latency. And we don't, I think the developers, they're always very, they have to be very cognizant and aware of, the user at times, may just simply turn something back on, or, like when you render something with an external effect, it doesn't free up that port because someone could, choose to unrender the track and they expect it to play back the same exact way. So it's still going to compensate, and it's going to do real-time processing whenever it's instantiated. And if you don't want it, just simply don't enable the particular plugin, the external plugin, but once it's kind of in the system, it's doing all the delay compensation necessary so that if you turn it on, that it's going to function the same exact way as when it's turned off. So just bypassing it still doesn't necessarily, change that setting, because people would, if you render a track and you wanted to go back and unrender the track and, or unfreeze a particular track, the expectation is that it's going to play back in the same state as it was before. So that's why a lot of those decisions are made. So if you don't want it to do real time, just simply remove the particular plugin right before exporting. See, Michael Teams has granted Gareth 1 gallon of dreamsicle ice cream, and he's happy. Okay, reading through comments. All right, so we have a question from Steve Green. It just says, hi, Greg. When I import a Groove Agent pattern over a period of time, it starts to drift in tempo. Any tips? All right, so let's just do it. We'll just do a new program. Okay, we'll see what this pattern is here. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this pattern. Okay, and come here. All right, so let's go ahead and just copy this particular pattern. So first, I'm not sure. So you said you dragged it out, but make sure that the actual event is exactly like 4 bars long in this case. And then I'm just going to copy it. So if you don't have snap turned on, and let's say if you copy it and it's just like ever so slightly, so I'm just going to turn my snap off. All right, so if I hit J, let's say if I move this and it's like I copied it over, and then let's say I duplicate this a number of times. So once we do that, we'd expect it to kind of fall out of time. So, but make sure that as we're doing this, so I have my one pattern here, and we'll just listen to it. I'll jump later in the song. So, make sure that the event length is set evenly to be on the grid, something like, 4 measures exactly. And also how you duplicated the event. So let's say over time. So, and also, let me know if you had duplicated the event by manually moving it, or if you hit just Control D to duplicate. But you can see that at 7.5 minutes, almost 8 minutes, it's still on. So check to make sure that you have that the event itself is like in on the grid for an even number of bars. Make sure that it's going to be like when you make the copies that you're in bars and beats as opposed to seconds, because that can make a difference with snapping as well. So if you could let me know if you're doing it in bars and beats and how you're dragging it and duplicating the events, that would be helpful. Okay. All right, so we see. All right, so we see Jason Sykes from South Shields, England. Thanks for being on. All right, great to see Braxel on from Texas, I believe. All right, so we see from Pindo Perba, question, I would like to know, will Cubase incorporate any AI in Cubase 13? So, I mean, technically we could say that, there's a lot of AI functionality in it. So I'm not sure if our customers will want to say, okay, write a pop song at 108 beats a minute, in a major key and modulate. I wouldn't anticipate stuff like that, but if we think about what's going on in the chord track, being able to make, artificial intelligence of taking a performance and creating a tempo and then matching other elements to that, being able to generate harmonies, being able to suggest chords for you. You could argue that all that is AI as well. So I think it's kind of I know it's kind of in, contemporary discussion, but I think that there's a lot of stuff that could be deemed AI already. So. Okay, so we see Cubase X says, bonsoir, Greg. Really appreciate these hangouts. I'm glad that you can make it today. All right, so we see question, is there a way to enable portamento in Groove Agent with samples spread across all pads in Mon Poly? So I don't know a way in Groove Agent to do it, but we could do it quite easily in the sampler track. So let's come over, take a look at a particular project I have here. I think I have it under all right, so let's say we have just kind of like quick little all right, so let's say I have a bass voice and we'll just create our sampler track. So let's say if I just want to come here and drag in a sample. So if we put this into kind of monophonic mode, so if we come right over here, we can say, okay, let's, we can put this, we see kind of the circle M. So now once we do this, so if we switch pitch, we can now just come directly to our glide. So at this point, if I want it to be a longer glide up, so you could do stuff like that. And you could also put it into kind of a quick musical mode so that we see that when this is turned off, that the sample, when I hit the key, plays the sample from the beginning, or when I release the key, the sample always plays from the beginning. But we could also, when we activate this mode, we could just come here and let me just change my octave on my keyboard here. And you could change kind of your glide time there. So you could just kind of hit two different keys, and you can see the keys I'm hitting here. And be able to kind of do different portamento glides and stuff like that. So this way you could have it kind of automatically carried over. And I think if we take this to Groove Agent, we'll just give it a try, that those settings may not carry over. We get the sample in. But let's see, and I know we could come here to the pitch. So we go to pitch and we'll set our key range. But I don't think that there's like a portamento mode that I know of. Let me just take a quick look around. Yeah, but maybe so let me know if the sampler track would work for you with that. All right, so we see Cubase X. It says still beat since last week of losing Tina Turner. So yeah, that was kind of sad to hear. Always had a lot of respect for her. All right, reading through comments. So you see Peen Doge is asking, where's the smash the like button guy? So again, Michael Teams promptly responded. So. All right. So we see from PZ136, can you go through the activation process for loops? So, most of the loops will be activated. The loops that come with Cubase will be activated with the particular license. I'm not sure if it's a license activation. If you have additional content that you purchased separately, if we come over to no, wrong one. So you could go to the Steinberg Activation Manager. So say if we come here, and then you could just see all of your different content. So once you have entered in your download access code, or if you go to your My Steinberg account on the Steinberg website, if you had loops that were perhaps purchased and on the e-licenser, many of them will have vouchers so that you could migrate them directly to the to the Steinberg licensing. So if you go into the vouchers, and I probably don't have any, I'll just take a look, see if I have any to show. So once you're here, we'll get to My Steinberg. Then we can sign in. So if you go to vouchers, at this point you could just redeem, and then it'll say, do you want to enter your access code? So this would then, if you say next, it will go into the e-licenser and kind of migrate the licenser, and you could follow the steps right there. And then once you see it here, it will kind of show up under products that aren't activated, and then you could just simply activate them directly from the Steinberg Activation Manager. So if you could let me know if it's loops that you've already purchased, but any of the loops that come with Cubase are going to be licensed already with the Cubase 12 license. Okay, so we have a question. I tried to freeze the NI Noir instrument with the particles turned on, but in the frozen track, some notes generated by particles cut off abruptly. Render in place works fine. So generally, when there's little anomalies in rendered files, it could be down to the plugin and how its engine is working. So I would think that, freeze and render in place kind of give you the same thing, but it could be a different approach. So see if you take the same particular track, and if you do it with other instruments and it doesn't do it, then it's probably going to be specific to that particular instrument. All right, so we see Steve Green asks, okay, Greg, thanks. How do I make the groove agent pattern follow tempo detection of an audio file, or is it automatically made to follow? It's kind of automatically does it, but let's go ahead and just show you real quick. So get new project, and I'll just import quick audio file. Okay, so let's say I just have like a live performance by band here. So I'm going to do a quick tempo detection of this. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's get to tempo detection. So we go project to tempo detection. Analyze. Okay. So we'll take a quick listen to it. All right, and I'm going to switch this to be 4/4 meter. All right, so now. So now let's go ahead and just open up a Groove Agent. All right, and then if I just say follow transport here, we'll just all right, so I'll just have that pattern follow. So now I'll find a different pattern here real quick. Something about all right, so take this and so now it's just automatically tempo sync. So now it's automatically kind of tempo synced. So this is just automatically following the beat. I know it's a horrible example, but let's say if I wanted to do, maybe I wanted to add percussion agent from like the full Groove Agent. This is always really handy for that. So let's add the full Groove Agent. Let's choose percussion agent. So select a pattern here. So now we'll kind of blend that in. So now Groove Agent is automatically synchronizing to the tempo that's extracted from. So Groove Agent will automatically just synchronize to the timing and tempo that's coming from the project right here. All right, so we see about the activation. It says PZ136 says I bought some are active, others are not. This is with the loops. So, once you've entered in, so once you buy them, if we just come over to this, if you put the code directly into the download access code, which is what you get when you purchase the program. So you go to the Steinberg download assistant. And if this is linked to your My Steinberg account, once you just enter it in here and copy the code in, and then at that point it will take you to the activation manager, and if this is linked, should automatically activate it. If you don't see it activated, again, go to the Steinberg activation manager and just click on activate there. All right, so we see from Couscous, it says, is there a way to configure freeze so that it works as well? So, I haven't run into any instruments. I haven't used that function on the Noir for NI, but generally it kind of works the same. The only time I hear of when stuff like this happens is with Contact. So I think it's going to be probably more of a Contact issue. So. See, IOL just says the term AI is overused at the moment, and Jazzu just indicates it's a marketing buzzword, so I would tend to agree. All right, so we have Root Screen checking in from South UK. Thanks for joining us today. I'm going to post the Zoom meetup link, and we'll be doing that in about 15 minutes, so I hope everyone can make it. All right, so Cubase X says, who's our guest tonight for the Zoom? I missed the start of the stream, so I don't know. So it's going to be Ted Perlman, who's kind of a seasoned guitarist, producer, engineer. So, he's worked, with Harry Belafonte, Burt Bacharach, Chicago, Bob Dylan, Whitney Houston, Diana Ross, all sorts of people. John Costigan says, if the computer AI to assist my songwriting, all the cool screw-ups would be gone. I would disappear in a puff of greasy smoke. So that's reason enough not to have AI, because we like John Costigan and we want him around. All right. So we see Steve Grin says, hi, is there a way of placing the time signature on the tempo track anywhere on an audio file without it snapping to the grid? By definition, a signature track, if we're going to start off with a particular meter, there's always going to be a meter at the start of your file. So, it's always going to be kind of, on the grid. So you could choose, where different elements could start, but so it's like there's always going to be, generally there's always going to be on the grid the meter. So the meter, will be on the grid. You could shift, the tempo to make the grid match the audio. So let's say, okay, like we need measure 2 to be right here instead of here. So at that point, what we would need to do, this is still going to be, let's say in 4/4 time, we would take our grid, and we would just go to our time warp tool and make sure that we're in warp grid and say, okay, this is where measure 3 is, this is where measure 2 is, and we would adjust the grid based on there. But that measure is still going to have a particular time signature in it. So that's why when we do adding time signatures, it's going to be kind of on a grid, just by kind of definition. All right, so we see Jeff Stanton's got a run. He says, thanks for everyone, stay well. So thanks for joining us today. See, VW Collaboration says, that's it. Thank you so much. I don't remember what it was. All right. All right, my chat field just jumped. See, IOL just says, I read recently that labels nowadays don't look for talented artists, but popular ones. No matter how bad you are, if you're popular, you're in. So yeah, we've had Jean-Marie Horvat, who does a lot of major label stuff, and he's expressed his frustration when, it's all about Instagram followers versus ability. So, but I guess in a sense, it's been like that for a long time. Garrett says we need AI bots running the planet while we spend 16 hours a day on Cubase. Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button, so. Great. All right, so we see a question, any Nuendo Live trial version? So I don't think that there's a trial version. It was just, usually it takes a little bit of time for a trial version after the initial release, but I'm not sure if there will be a trial version of Nuendo Live. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, just a wonderful capture program. But I'll pass it along to the team that someone is looking for Nuendo Live. All right, so we see from PZ136 says reactivating. One of the missing ones says the activation code is incorrect. Copied it from the invoice / my Steinberg page. Thanks. It says I copied it from the my Steinberg page. So I haven't run into any issues with that, but you could try to fill out a support request form. Probably the team could check the activation code that you're trying to work with. All right, well, great to see Tim Weinheimer on the live stream from Mission Viejo, California. And great to see Peter from Montreal. See Jazz Dude posted a tutorial that was posted recently, I did. See, Mark Isper just says he had a problem with strange lines. It's probably just within shades of the NVIDIA setting. So it's usually a lot of stuff can be resolved just directly there. See, PZ136 would like to be there, but Zoom is blocked on his firewall. Sorry about that. We'll miss you. All right, so we see from Learn with Steven just says that full Groove Agent edition was a surprise. Is that only on Pro version and Cubase 12 specifically? So the Groove Agent with the full version comes with the percussion agent in addition to more kits, and you could have 128 patterns. But that's I think the upgrade, or getting the full version of Groove Agent either by itself or within the Absolute 6 collection is a wonderful tool. I think it's worth it just to get the percussion agent, and you just kind of throw that in tracks and they sound immediately produced and very polished and slick, just by having the percussionists automatically follow, and you don't have to pay them. So it's great. You see John Costigan also concurs. He says Groove Agent 5 is an extra add-on with an extra cost, but it's remarkable. So, and there's a trial version that you can try it out. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions, and sorry that I'm still having some problems getting the Club Cubase at Steinberg.de email address to forwarding to my personal address. It just kind of stopped doing it about 2 weeks ago. I'm trying to get it figured out, and there's some holidays in Germany, so. See, John Barry just leaves a comment, 24-bit kits 2 in the full version, if he remembers correctly. So I think both versions will do 24-bit samples. But there could be some of the other differences with the full version. So some things that are in the full version of Groove Agent that aren't in. So, one is you could have 4 separate agents. So if you want to have percussion, like a hip-hop R&B kit, maybe like a techno EDM kit and an acoustic kit all together, you could do that directly within one instance. You also have sidechain input, so if you wanted to just come over here, you could deactivate sidechaining and you could sample directly into Groove Agent. The full Groove Agent also has a full performance mode, so if you want to do like note repeat functionality, you could do that. So if you want to put in like note repeats on hi-hats, a common thing to do on R&B music, plus you get more kits, more patterns to work with. So just a couple things that you could do. If we have a particular drum loop that's handy, I'll show you just one other thing that you could do. If you're working with a lot of drums, let's come over here to see if I still have it open. Thought I had it open, my sampler track. All right, so say if I play this. And let's open up an instance of Groove Agent. So once we drag a loop in, we could say, okay, let's just drag in my loop. Let's do some slicing on it so that the slices can automatically be mapped. And once you kind of do the different slices, that you have the option of classifying the different slices. So you can see all the snares will be kind of this color. Hi-hats will be this color. And then you could choose to replace and say, okay, I want this snare instead of the other snares every time that it will figure out. So we'll call this AI, where it's automatically figuring out like kick, snare, hi-hat differences so that you could replace those. So All right, so we see Braxel just asks, Greg, how well does the solid state Logic UF1 advanced DAW controller work with Cubase 12 Pro? They say it does. I want to know from you. I haven't personally played with it, but I know people have it and seem to like it. So, but I haven't personally. SSL hasn't sent one to me. I could probably get one. I have a dear friend that works there, but I haven't. So, but they, but I haven't had any hands-on experience with it. So, okay. So we see question: more than a year of releasing Cubase 12, no need to license USB except HSO, for example. Question is, can we hope that one day we will no longer need this USB license? So I think that I know HSO within the within Absolute is already on the new licensing. So let me just we'll see if it's on. Yeah, so Halion Symphonic Orchestra, it's transitioned to licensing on March 8th. So look in your vouchers. So again, if you go to your My Steinberg account, look in vouchers, and then you could transition it from your USB-E licenser to Steinberg licensing. So. All right, I'm going to go ahead and John Barry still uses HSO2. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and paste the Zoom meetup, and we'll get started here. We have about a minute before we transition over. So I'm going to go ahead and start the Zoom. All right, so Braxel asks, if I have the Dorco 4 free version, will it update to the free version for Dorco 5 if there is one? So there is a Dorco 5 SE. You might have to just re-download it. I'm not sure if it's automatically achieved through a voucher or you just simply download it again. All right. So we see, hi Greg, any chance there's a way to change the default behavior in the MIDI editor window under setup dynamics mapping? There's a checkbox, change velocities checked by default. Can this be changed? Okay, so let's take a quick look before we migrate over to Zoom so we could all meet Ted. Okay. All right, so I'll just do this on a new project real quick. So I'm not sure if you're starting with a template or not. All right, let's go draw a node in. So it looks like the send volume is automatically checked. So I'm not sure if you're starting with a template, but see if you save that within your template and start it, if it still allows you to work. All right, so I'm going to go ahead. We see Mark Rabin on. Great to see you on, Mark. And make sure you hit the like button if you've learned a new tip or trick, and we'll migrate over to Zoom. Hope everyone can make it over. Again, we'll get to meet Ted Perlman. All right, we see Mark. All right, so we have Jan joining us. All right, I see just one quick question on VW collaborations. Can we bend the sampler track up and down in octaves? So let me show that real quick. So let's say we have a sampler track. All you need to do is I'll just come all right, so we have Nick entering. But you can set in the lower left-hand corner, you can set the pitch bend range for, you see it by default to go up 2 and down 2, and you can set that to 12. All right, so we're going to migrate over to the Zoom meetup, and I'll paste the code. So we just see passcode does not work. Seems like other people have gotten in. Let me just paste it again. Let me check the passcode. We'll just go to the meeting, and I'll look at it to see if we could show the meeting invite. Seems like other people are getting in. All right, so we have Soren on. Michael Teams. Let me just see if there's just go to a quick Word document and show the invite. All right, so that's the link to the meeting. Let's get some other people are joining here. We have John Barry and Steve Green. Okay. So we see Braxel just says he does not have a commercial account, so he can't join. So I'm not sure if you need a commercial account to join. We'll see if there's... All right. Let me just go back to my Zoom meeting here. Okay, we have John Costigan. Great to see him on. And Brian Sawyer. All right. Just... All right. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up the live stream. And we'll migrate over to the Zoom. And we'll be back on Friday for our live stream starting at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. All right, so let me end the stream here. All right, how's everyone doing?